Hey, Wes here with Airstream Wanderings. Thanks for joining me today. And actually, I do have the Airstream this time around. I am at Rice Lake State Park in Minnesota, and we're going to do three things. One, we're going to make some replica pottery in the style of Southwest American Indians. Maybe cook a little supper. And number three, we're going to fire some pottery that I previously made over the fire. So wish me luck. So I thought I would maybe make a pot today in the Native American tradition. I have a couple kinds of clay. I've got some brown clay that I dug down in Pima, Arizona, and that cracks pretty badly. It's not very plastic. So I also have some clay that I dug in my backyard. It's kind of a greenish brown color, but it's very plastic and it's kind of wet. This other stuff is kind of dry, so I'm going to knead this stuff together, wedge it together, and use that to make my pot. Alright, now it's time for the next coil here. And I think I'll put this one on and maybe one more. We'll see what happens here. Okay, let's do coil number 2. Okay, I've got as much clay on this as I want. I think I put on 3 coils. Now what I'm going to try, I had to leave the top kind of open so I could reach in there to smooth things out. Now I'm going to try and get it a final shape. I'm not sure how that's going to go, but I want to bring the inside in, and so it's kind of a pinch and push in at the same time. Okay, that's what we have so far. I evened out the hole, and I think I want to put in one more little coil. Okay, here we go. Let's see if we can put a neck on this. These never, so far at least, have turned out symmetrical for me. Who knows? Maybe this will be the first time. Let's kind of finish things off a little bit. Okay, here we are. This is what we ended up with. It's not exactly what I was thinking of initially, but not too far off. And so it needs to dry a bit, firm up, and then I can get it out of the Pookie. And I know that there's some shaping that needs to happen on the bottom. And then it'll have to dry for several days before we can fire it. Or first we'll paint it, I think, and then fire it. But you know, for an hour's work or so, I'm not too unhappy. It's a great way to spend the afternoon. Alright, it's time for a little supper. So we're going to start off with some potatoes. Can't go wrong with potatoes. And onions. And I'm going to do a little salt on these things. That always helps. And some pepper. That'll come out very good. And I don't know if this is a mistake or not, but I have some chili pepper or chili powder, and also a favorite of mine is curry powder. And how could that be a bad thing? Okay, let's get the meat on, make some room for it over here. I'm going to flip these over. I think they're going to be alright. Meat won't take too long. What I have here is a bone-in lamb shoulder. And tell you what, I've never had that before, so it should be interesting. Here's our lamb, cooked for a little bit. I think we don't want it to cook a whole lot. A lot of times the lamb, they eat it rare. Potatoes have done kind of what they're supposed to do. So I think we're good with that. Okay. Nice and sizzly. I think we will call it good. It's medium to medium rare, I'd say. We'll give it a go. Here is the end result. The only thing I ever put on meat for the most part, other than a hamburger, is some salt. It always seems to enhance things. So let's see what we end up with here. Kind of on the pinkish side. I think that looks good. I'm happy with that. All right, we have one more project today. It's been a busy day. I'm going to fire some pottery in the traditional sense with a fire as opposed to a kiln. So I have a cup. Give that a fire. And then I also have a bowl that I want to fire. And then finally a little kiln god. And so with all this stuff, I'm not overly optimistic it's going to work out. Things are very dry in Minnesota, but we don't have a fire ban, but they have asked us to keep our fires fairly small. Plus I'm using a fire pit at a state park, and so that's different than I would normally use. But we're going to give it a go and see what happens. So first step is to start a fire, warm these things up, and then we'll actually attempt firing them. I help this out with a little accelerant. I think it would start anyway, but this makes it life just a little bit easier. I would say that's pretty quick. First step is to preheat the pottery and to build a bed of coals. Alright, what I have done is Created some kiln furniture in there, some things for the pots to sit on. This is the bowl is right here, and then kind of underneath that is the cup and the little kiln god. Everything is preheated, and now what I'm going to do is build the fire up around it and see if we can get it all hot enough to sinter. At this point, it really is in the hands of the kiln gods. We'll just feed the fire and use our best judgment to get it as hot as we think we can, and we'll see what happens. A pyrometer, and I set it out, but I failed to bring it, and it would be really useful to know just how hot everything is getting in there. I'm afraid that with the way this fire ring is built, it just doesn't get enough air to get a real vigorous burn. So it may not be enough to really get this pottery fired as much as it needs to be. This so I can get as much heat out of it as I can. It seems to actually be helping. The pots are kind of turning pinkish red. It's still too early to tell, but right here is the larger bowl, and then next to it is the cup. So the firing is largely over. We'll just let it cool at its own pace. The firing part is all done, and there's nothing more we can do at this point. We're just waiting now for everything to cool off, and we'll let it cool at its own pace. Looking at everything though, I'm not seeing any obvious problems, but you know, a lot of times we have little cracks and things afterwards, so we'll see what happens. Okay, well, it's after 9 o'clock, it's dark, but here's what we got. And as near as I can tell, it's a little early to tell for sure, but it looks okay. I'm pleased and a little surprised. Well, we had, I think, a pretty successful weekend. This is the next morning. The pot that I made yesterday, it's firmed up. I've smoothed it off, cleaned it up a little bit, and it's okay. It is not symmetrical. None of my stuff seems to be. A little bit on the wonky side, but I think it will do the job. The next thing now is for it to dry and clean it up, paint it, and then eventually fire it. Maybe we can do that in another video. In terms of the firing, usually I blew some stuff. I didn't this time. The little kiln god, he did his job of making sure that everything worked out. The little cup that I made, that's okay too. I mean, it's solid, so not a problem with that. The whites are not real white, but otherwise, I mean, it's okay for what it was supposed to be. In fact, I didn't think it was going to last. And then finally, the bowl, I think this is the best part. This turned out good too. I don't see any cracks or anything like that. kind of like the hazing on the back. I think it just gives it a more authentic look. And quite frankly, all of this stuff is made to the extent that I can in an authentic manner, the way pots were made 700-800 years ago. So overall, I'm pleased with it. So if you're pleased with this video, please subscribe to Airstream Wanderings. And until next time, this is Wes wishing you health, happiness, peace, and love. Take care. Bye-bye.